Hello there guys, and welcome back to the channel. Now, after with a slight delay, my apologies yet again, we are coming to you with the final class top 10 list. I do believe science is currently still the strongest class in the game, and therefore the science top 10 list came last. As always, before we go any further, this is impossible to explain at this point because every video hear the same comments over and over again. These lists are based on a mixture of my own personal beliefs and evaluations, as well as current game relevance and trends. Yes, whether champion exists as a 7-star in some cases matter a lot. In some cases, it doesn't matter as much. It's based on how the champion performs currently in the metagame. No, this champion list isn't meant for which champions are most helpful for Act 7 or Act 8 and stuff like that. This list is always made, or at the very least specifically now, it is made with champions in mind that people use when losing matters. You can bring in any champion in Act 8, and as long as it fits the nodes somewhat, you'll do well. And if you won't, you're going to have 4 other champions that are going to be clearing those fights. On top of it all, any and all champions on this list will also do great in Act 8. Yes, there will be specific champions, specific node combinations where they're going to shine in very specific fights in Ring of Sorrow or some path in Act 8 or some path in Act 7 or in Incursions. That does not, in my opinion, give champions the most value. What gives champions the most value is how they perform when losing matters. Whether they are the champions that are being ranked at the highest levels of game with the highest and rarest resources that we have available, that people spend the most effort and money chasing. This is a list of meta champions. Meta stands for most effective tactics available. Means it's effectively a mixture of popularity, ease of use, and effectiveness. And inevitably, we all play at different levels, we all care for different things, we all like different playstyles and champions, and there will be variance in all of these lists for all of us. You cannot make a list that everybody's going to agree on. Nobody can. Neither I have hard data and statistics from Kabam, you know, with the science champions, with the most use and highest win percentages in Battlegrounds and Alliance Wars and stuff like that. So, obviously, there is a part of personal opinion mixed in this. All that said, you can comment however you want and disagree as much as you want with me. That's fine. But no, I'm not clinically insane. No, I'm not taking the piss. No, I'm not trying to insult the honor of your family and ancestors. And no. Just no. As long as you are polite, you can leave all of those comments. I really don't mind. Just don't be rude and nasty to other people. Additionally, one last thing that I have noticed is a lot of people seem to be stuck into year 2022. A lot of champions that have been dominant for ages have just aged. And that's okay. No, Ghost isn't the top tech champion anymore. By a long shot. You know, Dr. Doom isn't the most used, popular, or most important mystic in the game. That's fine. And we are also, again, taking in consideration whether these champions are or not available as 7 stars, if it's important for these champions, or if they're struggling to keep up as 6 stars. A great example here would be, if I wouldn't be taking in consideration whether champion is or is not as a 7-star, I'd be putting Quake on top of every list. Not only as a 5-star, but she is de facto the strongest champion in the game. There's nobody better. In Mystic list, we would have seen Magic up top, but since she's only a 5-star, cannot make it into these lists. Right, anyways. So, this is the old list, and it's changed substantially because obviously half a year is quite a long time, and well, the game has shifted quite a lot. Not to mention there have been quite a lot of AI-related changes and issues in the game as well. So, let's jump into the nitty-bitty gritty and finally get down to the business and take a look at the science class as a whole. There are tons of champions that do shine when the right time comes, and there are tons of champions that could borderline make this list as well. Like, even Immortal Abomination, we don't see him as much. You know, definitely has uses. Morbius is another science nuke that can deliver if you know when and how to use him. That said, we have the buffed Luke Cage that's, you know, fairly good now. We still have Spiderman 2099 or Miles Morales, both of whom under right circumstances can be incredibly good. We have Spot, who came in with a bang and then disappeared in a spot. And then we have Overseer and Joe Fixit and a ton of other different champions that could potentially have made this list. A couple of the most notable ones definitely are Void. I was this close to including Void because I do think he has a place in the game. We do see him now and then, and he definitely at times, you know, competes for the resources. Another champion is The Thing. And the problem with The Thing is that you kind of need him Sig 200, and the 6-star rank 5, rank 6 thing isn't just the stopping force of power that it used to be. But I have faced some 7-star rank 3 relatively high Sig things, and it's no walk in the park. So I do expect Thing to hang around, and we still do see The Thing used either in incursions or in battlegrounds or in Alliance War as well, including offensively. Few more notable mentions definitely have to go for Mr. Negative. Mr. Negative has completely gotten shafted by AI. AI changes and evolution and improved processing power makes Mr. Negative unplayable. It's just a fact. Mr. Negative, even if he was meta relevant right now, just because of AI, you can't use him properly because you charge a heavy attack, an opponent refuses to dash in, and you just get hit in the face. So, I'm not saying Mr. Negative would have been somewhere super high on this list. He might have made it to the top 10, but AI completely destroys his chances for that. And other than that, there's still tons and tons of quality science champions that, based on your preference, could potentially make it here. For instance, Joe Fixit. Some people are doing amazing things with. You know, Red Hulk is one of those champions where if he was a 7-star, I would be 100% confident we would see him quite a lot about and around. But let's make it to the actual top 10. And in 10th spot at the moment, unfortunately, I'm going to place in Cassie. Now, Cassie does have two major drawbacks. Number one, she was released at the earlier part of 2023 when 7-star versions didn't come with the new champion releases. So she does not exist as a 7-star. And it is, you know, one of those things that definitely doesn't help her. But the most important and the biggest thing working against Cassie is just the fact that she suffers from similar problems as Mr. Negative. Luckily for Cassie, her problems aren't as bad because you do have this heavy charging time where you can kind of choose when to let it go as long as you have pin particles, and as long as you corner the opponent, you can still use her very safely and effectively. But definitely AI has made it much more difficult to use her. Luckily for her though, even though Kabam tuned her down, her taunt more specifically, still in between Inequity Mastery, the Relic taunt, her original taunt, she does the reduce all the incoming damage drastically, so even when AI misbehaves, she can still absolutely perform. Her role in Battlegrounds has diminished as of recently, without a doubt. We do still see some of her, but I still think she's going relatively good and well in Alliance Wars. And also, she's one of those champions that kind of fits these very specific, narrow role requirement fights. Being buff immune, being one of the few champions in the game that does have very good access to power things. There is definitely still a ton of value in Cassie. Unfortunately, you know, unless something changes for her, she definitely is on the way down at the moment. Next up, spot number 9, I'm going to give it to Red Guardian. His buff was quite solid. Again, a champion that does not exist as a 7-star, which is always a shame when Kabam buffs a character and there's no 7-star version of it. But as a 6-star Ascended, he's still absolutely on the nuke tier. He is a very, you know, damage intensive champion with a solid bit of utility. Still the aforementioned buff immunity, which can be incredibly helpful with access to slow, with access to different debuffs as well, and quite a lot of damage. So for now, definitely Red Guardian has been noticed by plenty of the upper and higher tier players, and I do expect for a while his popularity to rise until he gets again outpaced without the release as a 7-star. Obviously, him getting released as a 7-star would completely change pretty much everything for the character. But as far as buffs go, I didn't quite measure up to Red Skull and Mr. Sinister. Probably largely because he's nowhere near the defensive threat, because let's face it, that is a very big reason why Mr. Sinister and Red Skull buffs are so successful, because they are also very defensively capable champions, unlike Red Guardian. But when it comes to offense alone, I think, Red Guardian's buff was quite solid. He's absolutely playable now, and he does hold quite a bit of value in the game. Next up is Quicksilver, a champion that definitely got helped by his 7-star release, and with that, we do see quite a few more of him around in competitive game modes as a defender, as an attacker. And one of the Quicksilver's biggest upsides is kind of like unique interactions with different nodes, and that often makes him significantly more challenging as a defender. When you can't parry him, when parrying him gets penalized, when there's like much more block damage, and additional evades, and everything that kind of gets thrown at us as a defensively enhancing ability seems to be accelerating Quicksilver's power on defense for sure. And offensively, he's also a very capable and stable champion. Unfortunately, not as fast. He's not one of the nuke champions, but he's plenty capable. We do see him, again, both offensively, defensively in lines, where we mainly see him as a defender, but occasional attacker in battlegrounds as well. Not the easiest champion to play, and not what you would expect from a speedster. In ironic twist of events, his 13-hit combo is actually kind of working against him, because throwing 13-hit combo takes nearly double the time that it does throwing a 5-hit combo. So it takes significantly longer for Quicksilver to get to level 2 than, let's say, it would for Red Guardian or Red Skull or any random champion with a basic 5-hit combo, just because the animations are shorter. That is something that I have always found incredibly weird. As in, like, he's a speedster, but he takes forever to get to a special attack. All that said, still, pseudo buff immunity, access to withers, access to a ton of debuffs, access to trauma, ability to bypass all sorts of damage restriction nodes, tons of debuff spam, which is always helpful for a science champion. Very, very big burst damage. And again, plenty of defensively annoying mechanics as well. So I do think at the moment, after the releases, 7-star especially, we do see more of him around. I do think that bottom 3 plus Void plus Thing plus potentially Spider-Punk is getting some life as well, are relatively close and interchangeable. I don't think if you would say that Void is the 8th place instead of Quicksilver, anybody would be outraged. I do think that the bottom 3 are kind of mixed in together or close by with, some other contenders for these spots. I do think that Science has at the moment pretty much a clear top 7 though. And we can easily debate and argue where, whether Quicksilver should be slightly lower, or in his place would be Thing or Void, or maybe Cassie doesn't deserve to be on this list and Void does, and so on and so forth. So I think that is fair debate. And I think that is, entirely a matter of, again, your playstyle, your personal preference, stuff like that. Because neither one of these 3 champions at the moment has like massive footprint or the highest level of desirability. I do, however, think the top 7 spots are perhaps arguable and interchangeable in between themselves, especially towards the top. But there are clear top 7 science champions right now in the game, in my opinion. And in spot number 7, at the moment, I'm putting in Human Torch. And that's largely because, well, he's still one of those champions that Kabam is absolutely aware and forever have to be when they're designing a challenge, when they're designing a champion, because he is, a destroyer of energy attacks and specific class. The undeniable fact, however, is that Human Torch's presence has diminished significantly in the game. He doesn't make most Battlegrounds decks anymore most of the seasons, which would be something unimaginable a year ago or 9 months ago. Now that's a reality that in most of the metas, Human Torch doesn't find his spot in the top competitive decks, because there are faster, more versatile options, or options that work as dual champions and are just not, offensive powerhouses. And similarly with quite a few other nodes, it's either Kabam is starting to counter him more, similar to what they did with Nimrod, for example, or it's just the fact that we have similarly capable champions with less chip damage taken or slightly faster, and he just is having a hard time keeping up. Obviously, and this goes without saying, I do think Human Torch is a champion that any account should have access to. Champion like Human Torch, you do want to have at your disposal when the time calls for it. But that alone does not warrant super high spot on top of the list, in my opinion, because that is a very similar argument we can use for Ronan. When the time calls for it, Ronan is by far the best option. Obviously, Human Torch has much more going for him than Ronan does, but the main argument is still there that you do want to have him when he's needed for, because for those fights, in longer challenging for content, in story content, where he can absolutely cheese by getting a ton of smolders, so on and so forth, it just is not as significant anymore as his Alliance War presence is, as Battlegrounds presence is, and he's getting less of that. That said, again, releases 7-star, he'd probably see an increase, even though I do doubt Kabam is going to release him as a 7-star anytime soon. But we'll see what happens. It's definitely going to be interesting to follow these developments, because again, half a year ago, 9 months ago, I would never imagine ranking up Human Torch this low. But the game has changed, and so do these lists try to reflect that. Another champion that I never imagined placing this low will be Scorpion, because Scorpion, again, is one more of those champions that we do see significantly less of. And a very big part of the reason here is the fact that he's not out as a 7-star. And as a 6-star, even Ascended, he's not necessarily fast enough. He can't outrace, Titani nuking down Sasquatch Big House. He can't outrace Hulks and stuff like that. And you can definitely make an argument for him being much more versatile than, let's say, Hulk does. But when push comes to shove, and when we check which matchups we use, let's say, Titani and Hulk and Silk and Spiderman even, or even Photon offensively, it isn't that much different from what we tend or can use Scorpion for when it actually matters, and that definitely plays a role. Another champion that used to be like a hardcore staple must-have absolutely in every season of Battlegrounds, used to be hardcore staple in Alliance Wars, but he just quite isn't anymore. Whether it be that he doesn't answer most of the newest, biggest defensive threats anymore, or whether it be for a number of other reasons. But Scorp's stock definitely has fallen. Still an incredible champion. Again, I absolutely love these characters, and I'm super happy that I have them ranked at whatever highest rank and rarity level it is possible in the game. And I definitely have gotten a ton of money's worth with Scorpion, with Torch, with a ton Cassie Lang even, playing through piece of content, using them in Battlegrounds and Alliance Wars when they were relevant. But it is undeniable that people are using these champions less and less in favor for other options. So I'll absolutely love the Scorpion, but it's one of those things where if he gets released as a 7-star, I'm sure he's going to, again, increase in popularity. Since he hasn't, when it comes to the most competitive plays, we don't see that much of Scorp. Still absolutely recommend rank him up. Still think he's great champion design. I do think that, he's about as close to my idealized version of a science champion as possible. Move on. Spot number 5. Spot number 5 is Spiderman. Spiderman actually has remained exactly where he was, because that's what he deserves. He's a champion that, regardless of how many people like to overlook, because it is a pig in a spider suit and haha, very funny, is an absolute nuke. He's a champion that takes a lot of matchups. Plenty of other champions wouldn't, just because he has access to power sting and he can, utilize them very, very powerfully. And he is a champion that does get hunted for, ranked 3'd, used in a ton of different metas, and is one of the currently more desirable science 7-stars in the game, period. No questions about it. And On top of all of it, you know, he's also somewhat annoying defender. That's something definitely that you need to keep in mind of. He is a staple in Lions War defense pretty much all the seasons. He is, you know, continuously present in battlegrounds. He is also being used in other game modes whenever you do need access to power things, or just because you like using Spider-Ham. So at the moment, you know, I do certainly believe that there is an argument for Spider-Ham being even higher on this list, especially when I'm going to talk about some of the issues that are definitely affecting the game, and obviously not just Science class, but every class of champions and the way we play. And Spider-Ham kind of has gotten the benefit of it in a sense, because one of the more recent AI updates have made it more likely for AI to throw special attacks more frequently and easier to bait them. And obviously a champion using power stings does benefit from it, because at this point AI has started throwing special attacks even when you just hold block. For Spider-Ham, that's not necessarily a bad thing in most cases, and unfortunately for champion in spot number 4, and hold up, let me explain this. It is a problem. Champion in spot number 4, this is very problematic. Realistically, when I started making this list, I had Titani in spot number 2. I think Titani is incredible. I think, you know, buff immunity, tons of passive furies, tons of debuffs, the level 3 nuke, all the effects that come with level 3, and the heavy spam rotation, incredibly, but one of the strongest things in game. She's also a sneakily good defender because she's quite chunky and she can stall for a bit with her indestructible, unstoppable, and blockable. People do tend to make mistakes against her as well. And she's great. She should be higher on this list, all things considering. Like, if everything was just in the world, Titania would, at the bare minimum, be second best science champion in the game. And I can't put her there. She just doesn't fucking work most of the time anymore. She doesn't work anymore because Kabam are awful at their jobs. AI is disgusting. Intimidate debuff seems to be doing nothing anymore. At least 50% of the time when I go for level 3 now with Titania and go for level 3 rotation, AI just randomly throws special. Never used to be the case. Obviously, with all other issues and AI things considering, it just really hurts Titania. Like, when you could use her confidently, going for your level 3 and then getting into the nuke and finishing with like a level 1 or a combo, she was a beast. Now she's just nowhere near as dangerous, just because of the AI change. Hasn't completely destroyed her, because obviously she still has ways to play her, and even if AI throws a special attack after your level 3, you can still, you know, carry on the play because you're going to be indestructible and unstoppable, but it's going to waste quite a lot of time. Rotations get messed up, you know, and just not as scary anymore. It just isn't. And we were talking about this in one of the streams today or yesterday, where it's like, who would you rank up? Who should I rank up? You know, duped Hulk or duped Titania? And the general answer should be Titanium. Right now, I'm not so sure. Right now, you know, my Titania, unfortunately, is unduped rank 2, but, you know, even if my Titania would be duped, I'm not sure if I'd take her above my unduped Spider-Ham up or my duped Hulk up. Because I just don't trust her at the moment. And I also don't trust Kabam to fix these issues in the near future, because it's already been a while. And when we're talking about broader AI issues, it's been a really long while. So that's like a massive problem. Still a phenomenal champion. Love Titania. Amazing champion. That's again being hindered by the incompetence and incapabilities of Kabam. There's no better way to put it. Titania should be higher on this list if Kabam could get their shit together. Kabam can't, and I I don't want to place Titani higher. I mean, I do want to place it higher. I just don't believe I can. Right. Move on, spot number 3, Hulk. Now, Hulk has lost, I think, a little bit of his shine, but still he is like one of the most available, biggest, baddest, versatile science nukes. And that is kind of enough in science class, what you need him to do. He is, again, surprisingly decent, good defender, because when awakened, he's unstoppable, can catch people quite a lot off guard. He has relatively decent health pool, and on top of it all, you know, if you're running an equity mastery and your opponent is, you know, going through Hulk and starting to get the debuffs, then, you know, that is slowing them down significantly as well. Not to mention, if you do make a slight mistake against Hulk, eating the second hit of his level 1, the fight's over. But overall, let's face it, Hulk is about as straightforward as a science champion as it comes. He's a big, big, big science nuke, and it's working for him. He counters plenty of champions. He destroys most of the Mystic class. He can be used in a ton of different matchups as well. The one thing that I kind of don't like about Hulk a bit is that obviously there's still the RNG aspect of exactly when you enter your Gamma Rage, and whether it's going to be at level 2 or level 3 mark. And his level 2 damage is drastically different depending on whether you do or do not crit. So there are some inconsistencies in the character, but I don't think it can be denied that he is by far one of the more popular science rank-ups alongside Titania. Again, originally I would place Titania above him because I do think Titania has more in her kit. I do think Titania is more versatile. I do think Titania is a slightly better champion than Hulk is. But the one big difference is where Titania relies on AI cooperating after her level 3 especially. Hulk is kind of the opposite. With Hulk, once you start your stun looping, and as long as you have enough reach and you can finish nuking them down before your stuns get too short, you really do not care what the AI does for the most part. And that is massively, massively working in Hulk's favor right now. And that is exactly why I kind of placed him above, where just because he relies on opponent's AI significantly less with his stun chain, and he still does the job just well enough. Currently, I think Hulk is the third best science champion. Then, move on a bit further. In spot number 2, at the moment, I'm going to play Silk, because I do think that Silk is shining right now. She is the more effective science nuke, the faster science nuke, the science nuke with a safety net in her. Yes, she also does kind of rely on AI being aggressive, but that typically is the difference of fight lasting 30 seconds or 26 seconds or 36 seconds. For most part, Silk is a champion that you do want to have at as high rank as possible, which obviously encourages more people to rank her up, so we do see a lot of her. Initially, I overestimated how much you do want or need Silk to be awakened. In reality, even unawakened, Silk will function almost identically in vast majority of the matchups. And for most part, it's very simple. You just kind of go YOLO with her. You can nuke just about anything with a single level 2 rotation if you build up enough physical resistance. And you can always go for it, or quote unquote try, because you do not really care. Even if opponent uses the special attack, you will auto-wait it. And if opponent does throw that special in inopportune time, you can just slow the fight a little bit down, and then, you know, go for the same level 2 rotation, or just go for level 3 and finish nuking everything afterwards. For most part, Silk is absolutely responsible for some of the most impressive and beautiful and fun fights that you can have. And I do think currently she would take spot number 2, because, again, I would put Titania over Silk in this list if AI worked. Well, wouldn't be screwing over Titania as much as it is. I do think Silk is slightly better and more used right now than Hulk is. Not by a lot, though. And I do think, obviously, Silk has more modern kit with that access to slow, which is a very solid amount of utility. When awakened, you can obviously also not only mitigate regeneration, but reverse it. She does have ability to effectively switch off crit resistance, which is kind of underrated. And honestly, that special attack auto weight is so clutch. And there we go. I do think this is where Silk belongs. Also, incoming ruptures and slows suffer 90% duration, which is one of those cool things that people always forget, and you can kind of bait people in on defense because of it. Anyhow, I do believe Silk is the second best science champion in the game at the moment, in absence of Titania working properly. And the best science champion, I think, at the moment is undoubtedly Photon. If you do have Photon rank her up, yes, she has lost some of her defensive inevitability, let's call it. Like, because people obviously have learned how to fight Photon, and unlike Scorpion and Bullseye, she is a champion that you can battle with most of the champions in the game as long as you know what you're doing. At the same time, I do think so many people sleep on Photon offensively, and honestly, I do use Photon just about as much as an attacker as I use as a defender. One of the cool things about, well, not the cool things, actually, it's very frustrating and annoying thing is, with Photon being a defender, she disables willpower mastery as well, and I hate it. I hate that Kabam does things like that, but it had a perfect showcase in current meta where if opponent does get any damaging debuff on them, where most champions barely lose any health in this current meta because willpower is a thing, against Photon that can be so detrimental. But overall, one of the best things that Photon has going on for her obviously is the huge safety net from stuns and parries, because whenever you do stun her, you get that untouchable, and then it just makes using Photon so much more safe. And then in between her big energy resist and in between her interactions with Inequity Mastery, she's also quite chunky as an attacker, quite forgiving when you make mistakes. She does have fairly potent Petrify that you can use to reverse regeneration as long as you're managing to be aggressive. But even when you're not, Inequity Despair Mastery with her debuffs shut down most of the regeneration. Obviously, the Petrify also kind of slows down opponent's power gain. It doesn't, completely reverse it, but it is a very good counter to stuff like Mystic Dispersion. It does have access to Taunt, which is, again, super handy with AI being inconsistent. And I do think people sleep on Photon offensively, and she's still very much a defensive threat. Obviously, people have learned how to counter her better with more champions than initially. People use Hulkling to nuke down Photons all the time. Hercules does relatively well against Photons, and a handful of other champions. But still not the fastest to go down to begin with because of the inequity. She still is extremely punishing for any mistakes because of switching off the willpower and all the debuffs and petrifies being placed on you. And then on top of it all your chip damage effectively always stays against Photon. And yeah, offensively, she still matches up incredibly well against majority of the Mystic threats. Therefore, I do wholeheartedly believe that Photon is the strongest science champion in the game currently. Strongest, best, most valuable, most desirable, most used, most present. Call it as you will. All that said, that is my new science top 10. Let me know what you guys think. Here is the rehash of it. So, number 1, Photon, Silk, Hulk, Titani, Spider-Ham, Scorpion, Torch, Quicksser, Red Guardian, Cassie line. As I said, I think the bottom 3 can be interchanged with Void, with Thing, with a handful of other champions. I don't think the top 7 can be shifted below or higher. I think in between themselves, you can make an argument that Spider-Ham should be spot number 4 or 3. You can make an argument that Silk should be in spot number 4. I tried my best to explain exactly why I placed them where I did. But let me know what you guys think, and I'll catch you guys soon. Bye-bye. Hello there, guys, and welcome back to the channel. So we have all the information